iPhone XR update. Now, I've had this phone going on 3 months here already, and I want to give my updated thoughts, my experience using the XR, because I'm still getting questions about people asking if they should buy this phone. And of course, it's only been out a couple of months, so this phone is still going to be purchased throughout the year of 2019. Now, there is a lot of news articles saying that this phone is struggling. Tim Cook seems to disagree, saying it's the hottest selling iPhone since day one. And I think many people are buying this here in the US. I think it's struggling in other markets because there's a lot of phones that look almost just as good, have better specs in terms of on paper, like 4 gigabytes of RAM, and seem to have the features people need at a much cheaper price, which is why I think it's struggling in other places. Okay, so in terms of an update, I want to talk a little bit about my experience so far with the iPhone XR's design. Now, the first thing I noticed is that the chin has a thicker bezel and the sides are a thicker bezel. And if I'm actually looking for it, I'm a detail person, so I'm definitely going to see that sometimes. Does it bother me? Not really, because it's still an immersive panel. And I think this panel is much better than people made it out to be when it first came out. Now, the back is glass, so it definitely has that fragile feel to it. I'm afraid to bring this phone out without a case. I really am, because these phones, these newer iPhones, if you crack them, you're going to pay like half the cost of the phone just to fix the back of them. So get Apple Care if you really care about your investment in one of these newer iPhones. Now, the sides of this phone feel very reminiscent to the older iPhones, so I do like that. I do prefer the stainless steel on the XS though. I just feel like it's more premium feeling than that aluminum. It has a grippier feel as well, whereas the aluminum's a little bit more, I would say, slipperier on this phone. And then over here off to the side, we do have ourselves a silent switch. I do like that right there. And of course, the power buttons, everything is tactile in terms of the buttons. They click very nicely, stuff like that. Now, one thing I do want to mention about the XR as well is that it has this chunky, thick feel to it. So, I mean, some people like that, but to me, it doesn't have that slim feel. It's got like a chunky feel. That's all I gotta say. That's the experience I've had with it so far. It's not bad. I think it's a good size in terms of in between a XS Max and a XS in terms of the screen size, but it's a big feeling phone. It's not small by no means, but I do like the 6.1 inch screen that it does have up front. So that's how I feel about the design overall. I don't feel like it's cheap in any way. It feels like it can handle a drop or two, but I still want it in a case. The notch also appears a little bit thicker to me than the one on the XS Max. So moving on to my experience with the display, I gotta be honest with you, reviewing these other OLED screens, this display definitely looks dull in comparison. There's just no way around it. I mean, you could talk about how, well, it's good enough. It definitely is good enough. I'm not saying it's not good enough, but it's definitely dull in comparison to any, Samsung OLED screen out there. And that includes even some of the older phones like the Samsung Galaxy S8, for example. You put these phones side by side, it's very clear which one is superior. There's just no two ways around it. Now, what I do want to say though is that I still like the display. Why do I still like the display? Because I like LCD. I like the fact that it doesn't burn in. And I mean, I know that's weird to say. A lot of people aren't saying I like LCD, but hey, I do like LCD because it's easy on the eyes. It doesn't burn in. And it definitely has some natural color. So people like to read a lot on their phone will probably like LCD. There's something known as post-width modulation, PWM, something you might want to read about if you're interested. It's where there's a flicker on the display with OLED panels, and LCD doesn't give you that. So some people get eye strain when they are reading on, say, a XS Max, or any phone with an OLED panel. So LCD can be good for some people, but in reality, if you put these side by side, it looks dull. In the lights of an Apple store, you're not going to be able to see it. Get it home, you definitely will. Now, the blacks are not as deep as well. So when you are reading or watching something with a black background, it'll look more gray than black. So do keep that in mind. But overall, I do like the included wallpapers that come with the iPhone XR. They are pretty nice wallpapers, the Earth wallpapers. You can get them on basically any phone. Just Google up iPhone XR wallpapers. But still, I just really love the included wallpapers here with this iPhone XR right here. Overall, the display is not too sharp either up close, but I don't see pixels. So somehow Apple's figured out a way to get a lower resolution and not really see any pixels. So still very good display, gets plenty bright enough. No 3D touch is one of the things that I have missed every time I'm using the XR because I'm so used to pressing it. So many iPhones before this had 3D touch, and I would almost bet that A lot of people are upgrading to a 10R, had a 6S, had an SE, or not a SE, a 6S, a 6S Plus, a 7, or a 7 Plus, and those all had 3D touch. So you do have this little haptic feedback when you're holding down. So when it comes to this area, it's fine, or when it comes to the camera on the lock screen, it's still fine. You could still feel that little haptic. But overall, I just really miss having 3D touch sometimes on this phone. Now I want to talk about my update experience with the performance. The best way I could define the iPhone XR is very smooth, refined, and fast, but not like, it doesn't have this blistering fast feel. It has this very smooth, fast feel. So the way I could describe it is that every time you're going into an application, it just seems very pleasing to open stuff up. It's very addictive how fast these applications open, but not only quickly, they open more smooth than quickly. So something like a OnePlus or a Huawei phone like the Mate 20 Pro might look a little snappier, but at the same time, the XR has this smoother look to it. So it feels like a more premium software when you're using it just because of that. Now software, it's iOS 12. So you have your control center up to the right. If you don't have a XR or 10 before it, you definitely are gonna have to get used to up on the right. And then you're gonna have to learn how to do the gestures. It's pretty easy stuff. You'll get it. Reachability is like so. You just swipe down like that and you still have your reachability mode. So everything is still core iOS. You got your grid of icons. I do think it's disappointing that you can't split the screen on such a large panel here. But hey, maybe we'll see that in iOS 13 for better multitasking on this device. But I don't know about that. But overall, the software, it's iOS. So you're going to get updates a lot. And I think that's what separates the iPhone XR basically from other phones in its category, and that's iOS. That might be why it's a little bit more than say a OnePlus 6, because this phone's going to be updated for 5-6 years. And that's a very long time. So you're making an investment here if you get an iPhone XR when it comes to its software. Now, I want to discuss my update with the camera. Basically, it's been a 10S camera, 10S Max camera, without the dual lens. Now that would be oversimplistic just to say that because everybody knows that already. But what I do want to mention is that I really am impressed this phone can do 4K at 60 frames per second with no recording limit. So, you know, typically on like the Samsung Galaxy S9, you will get a cutoff limit of 10 minutes. And if you want to keep going and just record your video super sharp, I really like that we have 4K 60 here on the cheaper iPhone of this year. They could have cut that easily if they wanted to, and they didn't. So I'm very happy about that. I do miss sometimes having that optical zoom from the dual lens, and maybe the newer XR will get a dual camera, but for now, the single camera is fine. And I find that if you just zoom in a little bit, not too far on the iPhone XR, like just a pinch, it still has a pretty good quality photo. I do miss having object detection though with this camera. You can only do people, so it can't recognize, like if I put this Canon lens right here, it won't blur the background because it's not a person, and it recognizes that it's not a person. But overall, the camera quality is stellar for the XR. On the front though, it also has a very good selfie camera. So if you're using this phone as a selfie shooter, it's also very good there too. So I do like the selfie shooter as well, 7 megapixels, and it does a good job at getting the skin tones right here for the XR. Overall, I'd say my update with the camera, it's not going to disappoint you at all here for this device. My take on the audio, the XR's audio is good. It has dual speakers on here, so it's plenty loud on either end. So if you have it coming out the bottom here, or over here, it's plenty loud. Now, I do want to mention one thing. I took this phone in the shower. I thought it was going to be water resistant enough. I got water in the speaker. It took me like 2 hours to get it out. So I do advise against taking this phone in the shower if you're the type of person who, you know, texts in the shower and stuff like that. I do advise against that. I tried it, didn't work, got water in the speaker. I recommend you do not bring this into that environment or think you could bring it by the pool, because you're gonna get water in the speaker. This is only good for just a little bit of a splash or maybe in the rain or something like that. This is not sealed up as nicely as the iPhone XS and XS Max. So keep that in mind with the iPhone XR. Call quality has been fantastic for me. The Intel modems haven't made a big difference in terms of dropping calls. They have made a difference in signal strength. I find that I have less bars than I would on a Qualcomm modem phone. I did notice that, and I think if you're in a non-city area, you might have a little bit of trouble with these modems, so do keep that in mind. I also want to point out that the flash on this device was very strong, very bright flash here for the XR. That's something that's a little detail that I wanted to point out. So I noticed that these screws, these penelope screws right here, are not perfectly aligned with the lightning port. It's just a small detail that you don't see on other iPhones. It's kind of like goes against Apple's perfect designs, but at the same time, most people won't notice. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but it's just a small detail I noticed. Never seen that on iPhones before. That's always perfectly aligned with that lightning port. So the best thing about the XR has been its battery life by far. This phone goes longer than the XS Max. It goes longer than any iPhone I've ever used before. So if you want extremely good battery life, the XR is where it's at. It's so good, in fact, that you probably could leave your house at 100% and use this into 2 days if you're a light user. So I really think this could go 2 days if you're a light user. Now, if you're a heavy user, you're still going to finish the day with quite a bit of juice left. If you're a heavy user, I'm going to say you're going to finish with maybe 55, 60. If you're an extremely heavy user, you still would make it through the day with the XR. So we're done here. The iPhone XR, what is my overall update? This phone right here is a really good iPhone, I think, for people who wanted a XS, XS Max, but they're not really willing to go that far in the price point. However, I do think that the XS Max is substantially better, especially in the display. Now, that's pretty obvious, but I just can't use the XR every single day because, you know, the display to me is good, but I just can't use it when I have an OLED screen sitting right next to me. It just can't be done. But if you had an LCD iPhone before 7, 6S, it's not going to be a problem. So for those people, it's going to be great. I think overall the XR is good value. Its major problem is its competition. OnePlus, Xiaomi products, also Huawei products, Honor products, you know the drill. These are the XR's major problem because these phones look just as good, most of them, and they're significantly less in the price point. And that's where I think the iPhone XR runs into problems. It's not that it has all these beautiful bright colors. It's not that it's not a great iPhone. It is. And also it has its own internal competition from its own iPhone 8. The iPhone 8's a lot cheaper. The 8 Plus is cheaper. Apple's older iPhone 10 is cheaper if you look for it used. So it's got competition from its own manufacturer, and the XR I think just didn't do enough to like convince everybody to buy it. Mostly I think it was the pricing strategy and the display. But hey, maybe we'll see some updates with the next iPhone XR. And to be honest, coming from a reviewer's perspective, I have these other phones to review. But if I was just to buy one iPhone and my only iPhone that I'm going to invest in, it probably would not be the XR because I'm already paying almost the price of a phone with better specification. I probably would have just saved up and got a XS Max anyway. So do you got a XR? Go ahead and share your comments down below. Let us know what your experience has been like. I know a lot of you have had this phone since it came out because a few of you had said that you got one. So I'd love to hear your updated thoughts about it. Is there anything you're not liking about it, you love about it? Let us know. And if try to be fair. I mean, I know you might love the phone because you're using it and it's fast and all that, but be fair. Give some critique on it. Help people out to decide what they want. Also give some positives at the same time. If you guys found this video helpful, entertaining, informing, do me a favor, click that like button for me. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more. Nick here helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well, and peace.